Space is big, really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is, and it's full of aliens. Not little green men, mind you, but creatures so bizarre, so utterly unlike anything you can imagine, that you'd swear they were dreamed up by a committee of surrealist painters on a bender. And then there are the humans, hailing from a planet they call Earth, though everyone else just calls it that death world. Humans have a bit of a reputation. See, Earth, as it turns out, is a bit of a rough neighborhood. It's got things like gravity that would crush a lesser being, weather that could peel paint off a spaceship, and life forms so incredibly hostile they make a rabid Vogon poetry recital look like a picnic in the park. Humans, having evolved on this delightful little ball of molten rock and fury, are, to put it mildly, tough cookies. They've stared down extinction more times than you've had hot dinners, and come out the other side swinging, so you can imagine the galaxy's reaction when these Deathworlders, as they came to be known, finally figured out interstellar travel. It was a bit like watching a particularly large, grumpy badger suddenly sprout wings and announce its intention to join the local birdwatching society. There was a lot of nervous chirping, some frantic flapping, and a distinct lack of volunteers to tell the badger that its binoculars were on backward. It wasn't that humans were particularly aggressive, not really, it's just that they had this directness, this uncanny ability to cut through bureaucratic red tape, intricate social rituals, and millennia-old grudges with the precision of a laser beam aimed at your favorite teapot, and they always traveled with very, very large guns. The galaxy, for the most part, decided to give the Deathworlders a wide berth. Better to be safe than sorry, they figured, which brings us, as these stories often do, to the unfortunate case of the Glargons and the Zglorg. The Glargons, you see, were a race of highly intelligent, incredibly bureaucratic cephalopods who believed that any problem, no matter how complex, could be solved with enough paperwork. The Zglorg, on the other hand, were a race of equally intelligent, fiercely passionate insectoids who believed that any problem, no matter how trivial, could be solved with ritualized combat. They had been at war for as long as anyone could remember, their conflict a tangled mess of treaties, counter-treaties, and battles fought over the proper placement of commas in diplomatic communiques. The rest of the galaxy, understandably, had given up on trying to make peace between them centuries ago. But then, someone, and no one is quite sure who to blame for this, had the bright idea of inviting the humans. The logic, as far as anyone could tell, was that either the humans would scare the two warring factions into peace, or, failing that, at least it would be entertaining to watch. And so it was that a lone human spaceship, carrying a single diplomat and a very bored-looking pilot, found itself parked in orbit above a neutral planet, preparing for the most thankless task in the galaxy, mediating peace talks between the Glargons and the Zglorg. The human diplomat, a woman named Ambassador Jones, sat patiently at a table that had been specially designed to accommodate both tentacles and mandibles. The Glargon ambassador, a towering mass of pulsating flesh and bureaucratic jargon, had been droning on for the past 3 hours about the historical precedents for their claim on a particularly contested asteroid belt. The Zglorg ambassador, a creature of gleaming chitin and barely suppressed rage, was twitching with the kind of suppressed aggression that suggested he was about 2 sentences away from declaring war on the furniture. Ambassador Jones, meanwhile, was starting to get a headache. She'd hoped this would be a quick negotiation, maybe a chance to try out the local cuisine, but it was becoming increasingly clear that these two were determined to talk themselves into a full-blown intergalactic incident. Finally, she'd had enough. She raised a hand, silencing the Glargon mid-sentence and causing the Zglorg to twitch violently. "With all due respect," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I'm not sure either of you understands the situation." The Glargon, momentarily stunned into silence, blinked its myriad eyes at her. The Zglorg, mandibles clacking in agitation, looked ready to launch into a tirade. Ambassador Jones, however, was already reaching for her pocket. "You see, on Earth," she continued, pulling out a small metallic sphere, "we have a saying, actions speak louder than words." She placed the sphere on the table and the room seemed to hold its breath. The sphere, no larger than a marble, hummed faintly. "This," she said, tapping the sphere lightly, "is a device that can, if necessary, turn that asteroid belt you're both so fond of into a fine powder." The silence that followed was so profound, so absolute, that you could practically hear the universe holding its breath. The Glargon ambassador, a creature who prided himself on his vast vocabulary, found himself at a loss for words. The Zglorg ambassador, normally a fierce proponent of settling disputes through ritual combat, suddenly felt a chill crawl down his exoskeleton. They stared at the sphere, then at Ambassador Jones, then back at the sphere. The implications of what they were seeing, of the sheer casual power it represented, slowly began to dawn on them. "Now," Ambassador Jones continued, her voice still calm, still utterly devoid of threat but carrying the weight of 1,000 neutron stars, "I propose we skip the next several centuries of bureaucratic wrangling and get this treaty signed before lunchtime. I believe I saw a place down the street that serves a rather good-looking intergalactic buffet, what do you say?" The Glargon ambassador, with a speed that belied his species' usual bureaucratic lethargy, grabbed the treaty document with one of his tentacles and hastily signed it, his numerous eyes darting nervously between the document and the sphere. The Zglorg ambassador, his usual bloodlust replaced by a healthy dose of self-preservation, wasted no time in adding his own signature, his mandibles clicking together in what might have been a sigh of relief. And so it was that peace, however uneasy, settled upon the Glargons and the Zglorg. The lesson, as it always seemed to be when humans were involved, was a simple one. Don't mess with the Deathworlders. They might just surprise you with their pragmatic approach to diplomacy. After all, when it came to matters of galactic peace, sometimes a little overkill was just what the doctor ordered.